Hello everybody, Sander here, and today it is New Year's Eve. The New Year is almost over, or the year is almost over, and the New Year is upon us. And you know what that means if you've been on my channel for long enough, or at least glanced at it long enough, you'll know that every year, every New Year's Eve, I'll do a video covering every book that I've read in the year, because I really fallen in love with reading, and kind of wanted to share that with people, because I don't have many people to share it with, so here I am. Things have been a little different this year, though, because I have, decided to finally make individual reviews for each book that I read, which in the long run will help with the amount of time I take on these big videos to talk about each book. So I won't have to go in too much detail just because I didn't talk about them before. And I might add some little extra things to this big video to make it more fun and unique compared to the other ones. But that's for you to see for later. So without further ado, let's get into every book that I've read in 2024. Starting with January at number 1 of 2024 is Sweet Bean Paste by Durian Tsukigawa. This was released, I think, somewhat recently, and is a Japanese fiction book that centers around a young man who has to work for a sort of dorayaki, I think, shop. It's been a while since I read it. A dorayaki shop, which is like a pancake filled with sweet bean paste. And he meets an old woman who is a frequent customer who gives him advice and all this stuff, and eventually turns out she's very gifted in making the paste, and eventually they work together to make the shop better and make him better. And we also learn more about her as well. It's a very simple tale, which sounds pretty good from there, even if it's a little familiar with other stuff. However, this was a slightly disappointing start to 2024 because I was going into this hoping to love this. I didn't quite love it. It was very sparse in its writing style. A lot to be desired. Characters felt a little bit one note, even the main characters, though it's mostly the main characters. There were certain parts of the story there's a specific duo of chapters that seemed to have been flipped because they felt like one should have happened before the other. And it was so weird, but I noticed it, and it was just surprising to me. So, I don't know what to say about this book, really. It's a weird one. So, I think that's all I can say. If you want to read this, go ahead and read it, but this was a weird start to 2024, and I can't say I would really read it again. Going at number 2 on the list is Mort by Terry Pratchett. This is one of his Discworld books. I have not been reading these in any order, so this is just one of them. And it follows a young man named Mort who becomes sort of an apprentice for the Grim Reaper himself, who just goes around the Discworld telling people when it's their time and taking them to the other side. Seems pretty simple when you hear me say it, but it is anything but simple, especially with Terry Pratchett. The more things, transpire, the more weird they get, until it eventually all spirals into a really crazy adventure that, can a problem that only Mort can solve, really. I would recommend it if you like weird stories and like British humor, because it's got it all. I still wouldn't say I'm used to it all, but I think it's interesting enough. So, dude, go check it out. At number 3 on the list is a manga with Batman and Justice Buster by Aichi Shimizu and Tomohiro Shimoguchi. And this was released, I'm pretty sure, 2023, late 2023, and is a manga adaptation of The Caped Crusader, sort of in a futuristic Gotham City where Batman is heavily relying on a sort of AI computer assistant to help him use the city to his advantage to take down his villains, along with his, gadgets and stuff. And alongside that, there's like this, kid who's just moved into town. There's some weird stuff going on there. And there's this strange trench coat man wandering about, also pretty suspicious. That's the very basic premise, which sounds really weird, but once you actually read it, it's pretty interesting. It's interesting to see, what these writers and artists do with Batman in a more futuristic manga setting, which is pretty cool. Number 4 is Ultimate Spider-Man 2024 #1. This is the new rebooted Ultimate Universe, which is sort of like a new version of the Marvel Universe they can play around with. And play around with they did more of, as in this new universe, Spider-Man, or Peter Parker, was never bitten by a radioactive spider when he was a teenager, so he has lived his whole life as just a normal guy until now. He now has a family with Mary Jane, and he's still kind of working for the Daily Bugle, where his Uncle Ben is still alive, working for the company as well. And things seem slightly normal, except for the fact that apparently not too long ago a terrorist attack happened in New York that not only led to many people's lives being taken, but also Aunt May's instead of Uncle Ben's in this universe. And all of it seems to be blamed on one man, Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. So something doesn't seem to be going right. That is until Peter comes home and finds some weird orb that has a message from Tony Stark that tells him he needs to become Spider-Man, and it basically, gives him a spider to bite him, and also gives him a suit that's like kind of like, I guess, nanotechnology, so it morphs and stuff. And that's when he becomes Spider-Man. It's pretty interesting for a first issue. I like how this universe is now more into the more unique side. It's actually taking interesting routes instead of just being a more modern Marvel universe, which is kind of what the Ultimate Universe kind of was. And it's also interesting that, DC's kind of done the same thing with the Absolute Universe, so lots of cool stuff going on. At number 5 on the list is Sharpe's Revenge by Bernard Cornwell, released in 1989, and is like the 19th book in a series called Sharpe, and is set in like the 19th century, I believe, and the Napoleonic Wars. And this guy Sharpe is like the best British like captain there ever was, or something like that. And this book is kind of focused on him getting revenge, I guess, against some guy from the French who messed up his crew at some point, and now he just wants revenge. It is simple. I've kind of forgotten some bits, but that's kind of it. And meanwhile, this guy's conspiring inside France to just kind of get this weapon out or something. And then there's also this cheating subplot, which really just bogged this down for me even more. I'm sure a lot of you guys might like the Sharpe series, especially people from England. I heard about this book series from Dominic Noble and his, Lost in Adaptation book video series, where he talked about Sharpe a little bit. And I was kind of intrigued. I found this at a resale store, so that's why I'm reading like the 19th book and not the first one. But there's part of it that feels like this is something you can kind of enjoy without having to read the other ones, but I don't know. At number 6 on the list, finishing February, is Star Wars Dark Disciple by Christie Golden, released in 2015, I think, and is based on unreleased episodes of Star Wars The Clone Wars, which was a animated TV series, if you didn't know. And this follows a couple of characters from that series, Asajj Ventress and Quinlan Vos. One is a former Sith disciple of Count Dooku, and the other is a Jedi Knight. And the two have to work together to take down Dooku before the war gets worse. And that's the basic premise. There's also a little bit of romance there, a little bit of, dark side temptation. Interesting stuff. I think I like this book fine enough. I just think it wasn't like fully worth it. I mostly read it to figure out what happened to Ventress between the Clone Wars and the Bad Batch, where she comes back. Either way, I don't think it was that worth it. So, if you find this interesting, then check it out. I didn't care for it that much. Hello, everybody. Okay, so it's the next day. Obviously, I talked earlier about this being a big tradition, and usually it happens, or this video is posted every New Year's Eve, but obviously that was going to be a little difficult with a lot going on. So instead, every year, if I can't deliver on that, I will release it the next day, which is still New Year's Day. So that works out pretty well. And forgive my hair, I just got finished washing it, which pairs well with my shirt, which makes me look like I drink tequila on the daily. But oh well. But I do have something to show you guys. And that is my new shelf that I installed myself, which is pretty cool. So now I'll have more stuff to put on it. Pretty cool. Now let's move on to the video. At number 7 on the list is Vinland Saga, Book 7 by Makoto Yukimura. Book 7 has war coming to Kettle's farm after things just got worse and worse. And Thorfinn, Einar, and the rest of their friends are trying to escape because, things are getting pretty bad. And they continue to, get pretty bad as the story goes on. It's a very, thrilling and epic conclusion to the farmland arc. Pretty good. I'm still shocked people, say that the farm arc has no action when clearly a lot of it happens here. But I get they're talking about like the first part of it. Even then, it's still awesome. So I know what you're talking about. Please check this one out. Check the whole series out, obviously, before you read this one. So yeah, there you go. Speaking of which, at number 8, we move on to a new arc with Vinland Saga Book 8. This follows Thorfinn and friends, making it out and reuniting with some old family before Thorfinn tries to fully realize his dream of a free land. While he's trying to accomplish that, they come across a young woman who is fleeing her arranged marriage, and crazy adventurous stuff happens. Also a pretty nice little one, though it's a little more calm in comparison to the last one. Still pretty good though. And with March, we've got number 9, which is Holly by Stephen King. This is a sort of solo novel about a character from some of his other books, Holly Gibney. I had never heard of her. I had heard a little bit about the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, but this is kind of my beginning knowledge of Holly. The book centers around Holly trying to figure out a list of disappearances, all tied to some really weird, awful cannibalistic couple. It's pretty damn bad. Also, just plain weird. This book, feeling like a time capsule of, the pandemic and certain, political issues. So, read this if you want to. Not terrible, just interesting. Number 10 on the list is The Farthest Shore by Ursula K. Le Guin, the third Earthsea book, released I think in the 80s, pretty sure, and follows a young boy who kind of wants to help people out. Can't think of the name. It's the same place from like the first book, but it's now this boy at this like magic school who wants to help the people out because the magic in the world is dwindling, and he wants to help figure out why. Specifically, he's helping Ged from the first book, or also the second book, because he showed up in that one too. Still not the main character this time, but still a strong supporting character. Now like a 30-year-old man, I believe. And that's kind of the plot of the book, without going too far into details. I wouldn't say this is my favorite one. Obviously, this is, not going too hard into like quick spectacle-based storytelling. So maybe I was just kind of bored by it a little bit, especially compared to the other two books. it was still interesting. I just didn't find it to be my favorite one, but I'm sure you might enjoy it if you've read the other two books and you like Ursula K. Le Guin's writing style, which is good. It is still, something that you'll need to just I don't want to say get through like it's something really difficult. It's just like it is an older book still. It's still written by someone who um had probably read and was inspired by works that are even older than her. No disrespect, but this is how it is, and I'm gonna leave that alone because this is going on too long. At number 11 is Ultimate Spider-Man number 2. Came out like in February, I believe, and continues Peter Parker's new adulthood journey as Spider-Man. He's got to, do what he used to do back in the old universe and balance his life with being a hero. Though this is still the inception of that, so he's mostly just kind of working out how to use the suit and his powers, while, wondering if he will tell his family or if he'll just kind of keep that a secret. During all that, Uncle Ben and J. Jonah Jameson are trying to start their own newspaper business because the old one they used to work for is just too corporate and, is being run by the kingpin, Wilson Fisk, who's a pretty shady guy. And there's a lot of mystery surrounding the person who almost assassinated Fisk, the Green Goblin, who this time seems to be kind of a hero almost. Question mark. So that's the plot of issue 2 without diving too deep. Pretty good. This is the end of me reading these issue by issue, so at some point I might buy the just full graphic novel volume and read all of it. But still a pretty good start to something cool. Now we're on April with number 12, The Batman First Night, which is sort of a weird throwback to the late 30s start of Batman. So it's, kind of the start of World War II, and things are getting pretty tense out there in the world, and crime is really heightening in Gotham City, and Batman's gotta suck it to them. I was mostly intrigued by this when this was first announced, mostly because of the fact that it's like going back to basics. And that's kind of it. That's kind of what I realized it was. It's basically Batman from his beginnings, but in a modern art style. Mostly it. I know this is the first issue, so not a lot is going to happen, but that's what I ended up realizing. It's not a lot. I don't know if the story is even finished yet, because I don't know how long this story was supposed to be, but excuse me, who knows. But if you want to, go check it out. Maybe you'll like it more, and maybe there'll be more stuff to read from it. Alright, we're continuing April, and our first kind of disclaimer in the middle of a video. So, when I made this list, and I also filmed the individual review. I did not know that specific allegations would come out about this offer. And of course, that offer is Neil Gaiman. Pretty bad. They are allegations, of course, so nothing concrete, but I don't like the sound of them. So even now, I'm still kind of like very tense about that, because I don't know what is actually going to be true in the end. But this is the book that I read as a number 13 on the list, and also just my opinion of it as I read it in April. So, Anansi Boys by Neil Gaiman, and it's the sort of spin-off sequel to American Gods, about Anansi's son in England, and as he finds out, his dad is dead, and comes to terms with all that, his relationship with his dad, and also the fact that turns out he has a brother, and he's got to sort of deal with him. And that's kind of the plot of the book. A lot of weird stuff happens with all of it, but it's a simple story regardless. Again, my opinion is pretty much the same of this book, with or without the knowledge I gave you. It's a little weak compared to American Gods. It's a little dry, but it's a decent enough story. It's short compared to American Gods, so it's not like a disappointment with, a lot of pages to read through, make it much worse. And it's got a cool cover, just like the original book, or the first book. So there you go. Ending off April in number 14 is Pronto by Elmore Leonard. This is the actual first book starring Raylan Givens from the Justified series, which the sort of third that I kind of read with the short story compilation Fire in the Hole. This novel follows a older man who has sort of a run-in with the mob and has to kind of go into hiding, and also avoid the marshal himself, Raylan Givens. It's mostly from the man's perspective, so it's not like a full-blown Raylan story. This is, of course, like his first appearance, so that makes sense why. And it goes more into this guy, specifically, like his life, what leads to him going the places he goes, and all of that. It's a pretty good book. I enjoyed it. For a single story, it was good. I definitely liked the variety of the short story compilation, but this is pretty good for the first big main story that I read of Leonard. So yeah, I would say go check it out if you're into kind of modern-esque westerns. It's pretty damn good. Number 15 on the list, going into May now, is The Ninth House by Leah Bardugo. This one I was decently excited for because she is a new favorite author of mine now that I've actually read through the Six of Crows duology and love that. So this was going to be something interesting, because this is technically her first adult book, because everything else was, I guess, young adult oriented. This is still a fantasy book, but it's like sort of contemporary fantasy about this young woman named Alex who is part of this sort of like college that is related to magic and also stuff around the dead a little bit. And she can see ghosts when not a lot of people actually can, surprisingly. And she's basically got to figure out just what it all means and solve a mystery while her friend is away, who would usually solve this mystery pretty easily. It's definitely like something you would get from the late 2000s, early 2010s era of, goth fiction. That's what this feels like, kind of almost a sort of Vampire Academy underworld thing, but more on the contemporary ghost side. It's more just the vibes it's giving off. In my review, I did say that I didn't like this as much as I thought I would, and I still kind of don't. It's not as interesting or even fun in places as it was in the two Six of Crows books. Just feels like just weird stuff. Like I appreciate still trying to have like a mythology to all of this, even if it's mostly contemporary. It just feels like a sort of college drama with mystery and some magic and ghosts, with a main character of a dark backstory and some other dark stuff happening occasionally. It's like, it's not my thing. Maybe it might be your thing. There's just some serious topics here and there, so look all that up before you read this, because it wasn't the most fun. Number 16 in May is Wolf Children by Mamoru Hosoda, Yui, and Yoshiyuki Sadamoto. And this is like a manga adaptation of an anime movie of the same name that I've heard of as well. I picked this up kind of wanting to see what it'd be like in manga form. Partially confused if this was like the thing that came before the movie, but it's the other way around. The story follows a young woman who has to take care of her children after the father, disappeared, but it was pretty much confirmed that he's a goner. But it also turns out that dad was like a sort of wolf man, so the children kind of have wolf shifting abilities, and they kind of have to keep that a secret a little bit while also living normal life. It's a interesting manga and probably an interesting movie. I think the issue is, for me, it probably does work better as a movie, because there is a lot of this that is pretty mundane, so a lot of it is going to either be impactful as a movie, where the music, the acting, and all these little things are helping construct the scene and make it impactful, or it's going to be impactful if you're a parent, which isn't always a problem for audiences, or even me. Sometimes I can, enjoy a piece of storytelling about parents, but this didn't work for me as much, but it probably did for you. Number 17 on the list is Vinland Saga Book 9. We're still continuing the journey to find stuff for Thorfinn's, Island of Freedom. They've got to go to Greece first to get some stuff. And then they meet someone who wants to kill Thorfinn for what he did in the past, which, is, different Thorfinn now. So, a lot of that going on. That's the plot. It gets harder and harder trying to talk about these without spoiling a lot. At number 18 on the list, finishing off May, is a little obscure. Batman Knightfall by Dennis O'Neil. This is a novelization of the comic book storyline of the same name, and follows Batman tracking down a mysterious man who he's never met before, who goes by the name Bane. And this man is setting up all his stuff because he wants to do one thing, and that's to take down the Batman for good and become king of Gotham City. At least that's the start of it. But it's more than that, because, like I said, this book here compiles an entire, dozen comics worth of story into a whole novel, which I was shocked by. I was surprised, thinking that this was just going to be like a part one thing and I would never find any of the other books, but it would be fun. But no, it's the whole storyline, which is funny because right now I only have the first part of the comic storyline compiled. I think there's 2 more parts, which is funny that I have it all here in book form. But aside from that novelty, how is the book? How is it written? It's written decently well, tiny text, but that didn't end up as too much of a problem. It is a very straightforward writing style. Dennis O'Neil does not go into flowery descriptions of how things are and how they feel, but he just goes right for it. He just wants you to get to the story, and that's it, which I can't argue with, to be honest. And this is not the original story. It's a novelization, because this was written later in 1996, I believe, and then released later. This version is released later in 2004, and it's by Barnes & Noble Books, as it says on the spine there, so I guess they contracted him to make this or something. Either way, it's pretty interesting. Number 19 in June is Stephen King's Billy Summers. I think released in 2021, I think. And this is another kind of non-horror Stephen King book, but for some reason Barnes & Noble has it just with all the horror stuff, because it's Stephen King. This book is about a sort of hitman, Billy Summers, who only kills bad people, he says. And he makes that clear with the people who hire him. And at some point, a job goes kind of wrong. It seems to be a setup, and he goes on the run. Meets a young woman, takes care of her, and romance ensues as he takes down some big business guy. I mean, that was kind of an interesting story when I was like hearing about it, because that stuff can be pretty cool and interesting. I think part of the reason I wasn't a big fan of it might be because it could work better as a movie, or just because I wasn't like completely going into like a romance thing, or just mostly this guy just hanging out with this girl while on the run. I should have realized that probably wouldn't be just hitman stuff, which fair enough. Just kind of wasn't my thing, but I'm sure you guys might have liked it better when you read it. I like Stephen King for the most part, and I like to keep giving him chances, and usually there's enjoyment, but I don't know about here. I don't think it's because it's not horror. I think it's just because it wasn't for me. Number 19 in June is Vinland Saga 10. Journey continues, and it gets a little more dangerous. that's a little bit it. There's a little more action. This time, though, the other one did have some action. Other one before that, not too much, but if you're looking for the action in the series, then it is here. And some returning characters that I was excited about. So there you go. Alright, we're in July now with number 21. Blind Willow, Sleeping Woman by Haruki Murakami. This is a short story compilation from Japan. I picked this one up because it was a short story compilation, because that kind of helped introduce me to Elmore Leonard better. So I thought that would with this too, with Mr. Murakami, and it did. I'm just not too sure. It's very interesting. There's plenty of like surreal short stories mixed with mundane ones, so there's variety. I think I just wasn't in the right mindset to read most of these, because I think I just got bored a lot of the time, and that's no shade to him or to anyone who likes this or any of the other stuff. I think I just wasn't there yet. Finishing July and having the summer vibes for number 22 is A Happy Place by Emily Henry. This is the first straight up romance book that I've ever read. I literally picked it up at a store, just because I heard a lot of good things about Emily Henry, because I watch a lot of booktube where women are reading romance books such as Emily Henry. I don't know why I watch it, but it's fun, it's inspiring and stuff to put on when I'm writing. But what about this book? It's about a woman who is hanging out with her old friends at their old vacation spot when they were younger. But her ex-fiance is there too. Whoa, it's a lot of misunderstanding and drama. It kind of pissed me off, because it shouldn't have been this amount of misunderstanding. which is annoying. Like, there was more, it was more understanding with the, like, misunderstanding and arguing with the other characters later on. It's still annoying, but it's more real feeling than this. But it's well written, and I do like some of the characters, so that's why I'm a little upset. Maybe I could give her another chance, Emily Henry, but I'm not a full romance guy, so we'll see. For October, now at number 28, is No Country for Old Men by Cormac McCarthy, released in like 2005. This is one of his most popular novels, which was turned into a movie of the same name with Josh Brolin, Javier Bardem, and Tommy Lee Jones, and it is set in Texas, kind of close to the border of Mexico, and follows a man who comes across the aftermath of a drug deal gone wrong, takes a sack full of $1 million, and runs off and gets chased by a man who is looking for the money, and also by the local sheriff. He was just trying to get the money back and solve this whole thing. It's a pretty good book. I actually listened to the audiobook while reading this, something I've never done before, but I've heard people do. And it did help because McCormick's writing style, I said McCarthy's writing style is a little more unique, as there is barely any punctuation outside of it. Some occasional commas and periods. Well, of course periods, but occasional commas. And there are no quotation marks, so sometimes it's a little hard to know when someone's talking, but more importantly, what character is saying what. So there's that, but the audiobook version helped quite a bit. This is a very immersive book that puts you into the very, kind of harsh Texas setting and makes you feel like you're being hunted down by Anton Chigurh or, Javier Bardem, the very scary man who is still pretty scary in the book as well as the movie. So if you're into that sort of stuff and you haven't read McCarthy yet, check it out. Number 29 in October is Absolute Batman #1, which came out in October. This is a new iteration of Batman, part of the Absolute universe that DC created. The whole idea being that in this universe, each classic DC character has had their whole story changed, and they've kind of lost something about them from the previous universe. For Superman, it's supposed to be that, he doesn't have his adopted parents. With Wonder Woman, she doesn't have the Amazonians. And with Batman, he doesn't have any money. This Bruce Wayne is not rich, and he also took up an engineering job, but of course he's still Batman after all. A Batman who has kind of created his own gadgetry, so he's still pretty smart and pretty resourceful. He just doesn't have the money to, fund some of the stuff that he normally would. This is also a very violent Gotham City, though I guess that's not entirely that new. With a gang called the Party Animals ravaging Gotham, and they're being funded by Black Mask, who is another classic Batman villain, and Batman's gotta stop them. At the same time, Alfred Pennyworth, who isn't Batman's butler in this universe, but instead a mercenary, is surveying the city and also tasked with surveying Batman. So, quite interesting. Like Ultimate Spider-Man, this is a very interesting take on this classic character that I actually liked. It's something more unique and bold, and I like it. Lots of interesting changes. Not, all of them are going to work, but I like that they're taking risks. That, Batman, now famously with this, is very bulky, making up for his lack of martial arts training, and again, lack of money. And he's also got like a part of an axe as his bat symbol that he can take out of his chest and use as an axe, which is really weird, but oh well. He also doesn't kill people, but he cuts off hands, so there you go. Number 30, finishing off October, is Hidden Pictures by Jason Recolek or something. Sort of a mystery thriller, I think. I don't think it's specifically a horror novel. This was released in 2023 and revolves around a young woman who has just been going for rehab and gets a job as a sort of nanny for this well-off family who's moved into this kind of nice house in a suburb. And the more she hangs out with this kid, she starts noticing stuff that's kind of off, mostly with the kid's drawings, which are progressively more disturbing and might point to something interesting. This was a pretty good book. I was sunken into it. Pretty decently written. Some I won't say realistic characters, because I wouldn't always say that with these sorts of books, because you never know. But I feel like they're, they feel real, some of these characters. And it's decently spooky. Not like bone chilling, but still pretty good. And I like the extra immersion by actually showing you the drawings in the book instead of describing them. Nice little touch. I liked it. I'm sure a lot of people liked it, though there's some like reviews that I've seen occasionally that, bring up an aspect of the book that is prominent, that is up for discussion, and that's stuff to do with transgender people. And I can see that being seen in a bad light, or some people seeing it being written that way. Me personally, I didn't. There were moments where like, where's this going? And then it's like, okay, safe enough to where it doesn't feel like anything's being painted negatively. Outside of like you could say that there's some negative connotation with the fact that there's characters written as atheists or people of more logical persuasion, while the main character is a little more tied with God. So you can see that conflict, which I also can see, but I didn't see it in too negative of a light to where like the offer is like, this is right and this is wrong. I didn't really see that, but I can understand someone taking it that way. And maybe I missed some things. Who knows? Number 31 in November now is Iceberg by Clive Cussler. This is the third Dirk Pitt book in an adventure series that I've been reading, and follows Dirk Pitt uncovering a ship hidden in an iceberg and following the sort of plot that unravels from that and the bad guys chasing him. It is a very basic story. I think it's like one of the weaker ones that I've read in this series so far. So, it didn't do a lot for me, and there's not a lot to think about or talk about, really, unfortunately. I've enjoyed his books pretty decently for the most part. I feel like I just need to probably maybe read some of the later ones, like the more recent ones, kind of like what I did when I accidentally read like the latest Dirk Pitt book as like the first one that I read. Maybe I need to kind of do that, but more in the middle, because I feel like the later stuff is a little more exciting and more impactful as Cussler progresses in age and writing quality. I believe so, at least. Number 32, The Last of November, is Wicked by Gregory Maguire. And this is, of course, as you've probably seen a lot of, what the movie is based on, but also the musical that came from this book, and is basically an origin story for the Wicked Witch of the West from the classic Wizard of Oz story. And we get to, kind of see how she became wicked. I didn't like it that much. I wish I liked it, but I didn't. Text size, it's always something weird with books. Sometimes text size can just exacerbate my issues with a book or not fully dampen my enjoyment. This kind of did, paired with just the long descriptions, and also just, I guess, the author attempting to copy L. Frank Baum's writing style a bit, to sort of like help connect it to the world of Oz, which I can give credit for, but it just didn't work for me. On top of it being a little bit of a cynical book, so that it just has a lot of characters being mean, even if it is in the attempt to make the society unaccepting of someone like the witch, whose name is Elphaba, which I understand. It's just didn't quite gel with me. But I guess that might just be the book, because from what I've seen of the movie, advertisements, it seems much more positive than the book. So maybe that's better, or maybe I don't like either of the Wicked stuff. Maybe it's just not all for me. At number 33, now in December, we've got Dead of Winter by Darcy Coates, my first Darcy Coates book, and also the first book I've ever read that's in first person present tense, so everything's happening in the present moment, kinda. So that was unique. And it's a horror book about a woman in this, like, or near this sort of lodge resort or whatever with a bunch of other people, and they're having to deal with this horrible winter storm, kind of away from civilization a bit, and there's also a killer somewhere out there taking them out one by one. So a lot on the line there. This was a pretty good book, actually. I surprised that I actually enjoyed it with the different style of tense, and also first person, because first person isn't like my favorite POV in a book already, but it kind of worked here with the alternate tense, and it helped make the terror feigns much more powerful. And I don't know if Darcy Coates writes it in this style outside of this book. Maybe she does. Either way, I think I'm gonna check out more of her stuff at some point this year. And at number 34, A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. This is, of course, like the big daddy of, I guess, modern fantasy books. There's a lot of modern fantasy books that are the big daddies, but this is the one everyone knows. The one that, got turned into a big TV show and just made dragons cool again, I guess. I don't know. I've had this book on my shelf for a while, but now I finally read it, and I enjoyed it. Despite the small text and the chunky size, I enjoyed it quite a bit. Pretty good world building, really good characters, some great dialogue. Like, it had a lot that swayed me, despite, stuff that was like intimidating me throughout, but I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I'm glad I did, because it was worth the read. And I haven't even watched the TV show. I've watched House of the Dragon, but not the Game of Thrones show, so it was enjoyable reading the story. So I'm glad I finally got to. And that is 2024 in all of its book-based glory. And we did it, guys. We've covered every book that I've read in 2024, and the year is over. I kind of wish I finished this video sooner, but a lot going on. But it's still the new year, so it's still worth, going over all of this. And I do kind of enjoy that. But obviously doing individual reviews helped make this a lot smoother. So there we go. But as I did say in the beginning, there's more to this. So stay tuned for some little extra bits before the video's over. Alright, so in terms of stuff that I wanted to add to the end of this video as like a nice little bonus were little lists. Because even though this video is a list in itself, it's kind of simple, but these little extra ones I'm adding are more opinion based and a little shorter. So let's start off with top 3 favorite book covers, because even though generally you were supposed to not judge a book by its cover, I'm going to do that with my favorite book covers of the year. And these books don't have to necessarily be ones that I liked, content-wise, but if the cover is really good, then I'll put it on here, and then afterward, we'll do something else. So, starting off with number 3, the lowest but still pretty good, The Familiar It's a simple cover, but I do enjoy the art put into it. It's very striking with, the black background, this, pale, well-dressed hand, and this chain and all the stuff, and the gold lettering on top of it. It's very vampire-esque and catches your eye, so I decided to include it, even if the book itself was not my favorite. Number 2 for my favorite cover was Vinland Saga, Book 7. I couldn't think of anything to put in the middle exactly in terms of other books, so I decided to include a manga because I thought this cover was pretty cool, though there's some other good covers with these books, but this one's kind of epic. Nice little middle spot. And my number one favorite book cover of 2024 is Sharpe's Revenge. Like I said, I don't have to like the book itself, but this cover is really good. I didn't mention it when I was talking about this book earlier, but the cover is so damn good. It's so well made, like just beautiful artistry. Also love the feeling of the front as well. Book feeling is underrated, and I just love it. Well put together. And those are my favorite covers of 2024. So let's move on to the next and final list. Alright, final little bonus list for this video for 2024, and that is my top 3 favorite books. Unlike the, covers earlier, this is all based on the, contents of a book, what I liked about them, and so forth. There were some good picks, I'll admit, but all of them came from the latter half of this year. So let's start with number 3, and that is No Country for Old Men. This was a really good one. Top tier stuff, but not my top king of the crop favorite of the year, but a really good book. Number 2, Game of Thrones. It seems a little weird that I just ended the year with this, but it's also a favorite. But I couldn't help myself. It was really good. So much to enjoy. And yeah, and then number 1 is also kind of doing that thing of I did read it recently, so it's almost playing recency bias, but this one was also really good, but surprisingly kind of swept away number 2. Slightly surprised, but the more I thought about it, the more I agreed with my own decision. I don't know. The more I just grew content with it. And number 1 is Dead of Winter. I don't know why I picked this, but it was just so unique in its writing style for me. And, for the first time reading this author, I think it really turned out pretty good. And I just couldn't help but put it in number 1. Because everything else was either similar or, I don't know, similar books, some fantasy stuff, stuff that I recognize as really good and enjoyed somewhat, but didn't throw myself into as much. Or there's a lot of comics and stuff that is part of incomplete stories, but are still good. So I think with all of that in account, this was a number one favorite for me. And that is the true end of this video, of this list, and of 2024. I hope you really enjoyed this video. And if you're here at the end, I really appreciate it. And this was a long time coming. And I'm happy that I've been doing these videos for a long time now. So, thank you for watching. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. That'd be nice. Maybe even like the video if you liked it. And I'll see you guys next time. Happy New Year.